Greetings everyone, my name is Bife here. Welcome back to my beginner's guide to Destiny. Last time we covered the lore of the Awoken, who are without a doubt one of the most interesting groups in all of Destiny. However, this time we're going to be covering the no less fascinating but third playable race in Destiny, the Exos. The Exos are, much like the Awoken, post-human, which is to say that at one point every Exo was a human being. However, unlike the Awoken of the Reef, these robotic frames came about not through some grand cosmic design of enigmatic queens and existential forces of the universe. Instead, they came about through suffering, steel, and a single man's dream of insatiable desire. A desire for immortality. That man was Clovis Bray I. It's fair to say that he was somewhat lacking for a moral compass, and that calling him a narcissist was a dramatic understatement. Clovis Bray was a morally reprehensible man, but he was also a genius. His goal, however, was to guide all of humanity out into the stars, and to ultimately create for them the greatest possible future. The manner in which he wished to do this was by becoming the last universal common ancestor, or Luca, for all humanity. He believed, selfishly, that this would provide humanity with its best chance at survival and glory as it went into the future. This, however, was not something he would accomplish through the continuing on of his bloodline. He would instead become the Luca for all humanity by expanding the definition of human life. Whilst Genghis Khan is a universal common ancestor of something like 1 in every 200 men on Earth, today, through natural means, Clovis intended to see all of humanity in another sense become his progeny, or at very least to advance through mechanisms of his own design, thanks to the process of synthetic ascension that he foresaw for us. He wished for humanity, and of course for himself, to obtain immortality through their transcendence into mechanical bodies, which would be known as Exos. The process of originally creating these Exos was something that lasted long before the process was refined by Clovis Bray, and it was originally very flawed. In fact, these first few Exos couldn't truly be considered alive, or at very least couldn't be considered alive by the definitions of qualia required to ensure that there is indeed a functioning and healthy human mind within the chassis that they were installed into. They lacked basic traits that meant they essentially could function like real people, but then they would fail to display what properly maintained human personalities beyond any certain amount of time. To spare you a lot of jargon, which I go over in a different video in the series on the channel, these early proto-Exos, as you might call them, were effectively about as human as zombies. They didn't walk around looking for brains to eat, of course, but those who became Exos saw their minds degrade with their digital shells until eventually they suffered death within the prisons of their own minds. Brain death, in fact, was the #1 fate of everybody who became one of the early Exos. They could react in certain ways, but it was realistically just recursive pattern loops within their heads. It wasn't true human stimulus and sudden reaction to it. It was what Clovis would have called billboarding. To solve this, Clovis knew he had to come up with a solution to this particular set of problems, and so he searched for answers. He found them first on the moon, thanks to an artifact of darkness known as the K1 artifact. If you go to the center of the Crucible map called Anomaly, and you see the big dodecahedron in the middle, yeah, K1 is contained within that. The K1 artifact directed Clovis Bray to search on the ice moon of Jupiter known as Europa. There he would find more than simply the cold of the surrounding environment and the radiation-soaked ice. He would also find something remarkable. He would call it Clarity. It was essentially a statue of darkness, which projected a field around it with strange properties. Reductive properties, ones that effectively induced a higher state of entropy. This field was in several instances lethal to the staff of the Clovis Bray Corporation, particularly when they tried to move the statue to some other location. It would also begin to send Clovis Bray strange visions whenever he died, which was regularly given the cold of Europa. This is not to say that he resurrected himself by some strange means. His body was regularly revived and resuscitated thanks to the extensive modifications and equipment that he regularly brought with him. In these visions, it was made clear that the darkness wanted Clovis to build a Vex portal, and so, like the suggestible madman that he was, he did exactly that. The portal can still be found in the Glassway strike on Europa at the very end. It's what the final boss emerges out of. And eventually, Clovis Bray and his team went into the portal. Within the portal, Clovis Bray found what is essentially a Vex superstructure, a structure built around a giant star, a star that they would call Volantis 2082. This would also be nicknamed the Forge Star. The Vex essentially had created a project of mega-engineering, something grander even than a Dyson sphere, something from which they were pulling raw materials which they would then be able to use to create whatever they needed. And beyond that, it looked as though they were also refueling the star, meaning that it would never die and could maintain its current size. Beyond all of that, Clovis would also find Vex units there, and him and his team would bring back Vex mind fluid through the Vex portal. Clovis then discovered that when the mind fluid was exposed to the special field of the Darkness statue, something remarkable happened. Clovis discovered that it turned the Vex mind fluid, which previously was a substance that could overwhelm and eventually kill any human subject it came into contact with, into a substance with reductive capabilities that worked to help create the conditions one would normally find within a human brain. Except this fluid, this new substance, could be used to create a more effective exomind and to solve the problems that we talked about earlier. Meaning that past failings and previous iterations of the Exo could in fact be fixed. With this discovery, Clovis had effectively done it. He had discovered the means to grant humanity immortality through his Exos. And with this, the Exos were born. Exos are seen as robotic, and in many instances are mistaken just for robots, but they're not anywhere near as simple as something like, say, the frames that patrol the tower and act as postmaster and do maintenance, such as sweeping things up. Exos are also not an artificial intelligence in the traditional sense, considering that they contain a real human mind in every case. They are, however, strong, dependable, and easily capable of being ferocious warriors. Make no mistake, they each also have personalities, and due to their human minds, every single one of them is as unique as any human being that you might encounter. Essentially, aside from their skin and bones being made not of cartilage or of skin cells, you're instead looking at someone who's simply made of steel and maybe some kind of advanced polymer. The Exos are in many ways enigmas even to themselves, not completely understanding their Europan origins or the integral link to themselves and the darkness, even from the beginning of their lives. Such secrets were closely guarded by Clovis Bray and those he trusted most. There are, however, ways in which the Exos still don't completely understand themselves beyond even these basic facts. The first of these is the enigma of the dreams that they all have. Some Exos dream of walking through a field of golden millet to a tower where they will be at peace. Most others, though, experience only a constant battle to reach this same tower. Most Exos believe that this place is in fact the Deepstone Crypt, the place where they were born. At least the place where most Exos were born. There are several exceptions. Exos are also, in a way, held captive by their own lack of memories, owing to the fact that they sometimes still suffer from the need to reset themselves. Let me explain. Most Exos will have a name, yes, but they will also have a number that follows it, such as Saint 14, Lakshmi 2, Kate 6, Banshee 44, or Ada 1. This number represents the number of times that they have been reset. Resetting is something that every Exo has to go through at some point because of something called dissociative exomind rejection, or DER. DER is basically an Exo's human mind recognizing that they're not in a human body and then starting to reject their Exo body and lose their human mind. To prevent this, Exos must be reset, but in the process, they will lose all the memories of their former lives as whatever copies of themselves they were before. For example, Cayde 6 will have been reset up to the point where his number has reached 6, meaning that previously he has been known as Cayde 1, Cayde 2, Cayde 3, Cayde 4, and Cayde 5. DER can also be staved off thanks to the humanisms and human features that are built into the bodies of all Exos. For example, if you were previously a male and identified as such, you'd be less prone to DER if your Exo body had male features that similarly matched your own. It's also a reason why Exos still do things such as eating and drinking, in spite of the fact that they have no nutritional requirement to do so. Furthermore, it's why Exos do not have extreme modifications to them that might be possible considering their mechanical chassis. I won't go into too much detail, but the experiments of Clovis Bray are recorded in a logbook, and one terribly gruesome example is an Exo which has a second set of arms grafted into their body. In other words, they have 4 arms and 2 legs instead of 2 arms and 2 legs, and the results are almost instantaneous and gruesome. DER is a problem, and this is why Exos look like humans and have many human features. It's also worth noting that with each reset, Exos don't necessarily know what happened in their previous mechanical or human lives. Probably the most important of all the Exos that we know in the story is that of the Exo Stranger. She has introduced us to the powers of darkness, has shown us that the light is not the only power that Guardians can wield, and in this timeline has also been a link to her grandfather, Clovis Bray I. Yeah, the same Clovis Bray. Her real name is Elsie Bray, and she was there for most of the creation processes of the Exo. Elsie Bray was also Clovis Bray's granddaughter. Needless to say, that goes without saying because of the name. During her time on Europa, not only would she assist her grandfather in the creation of the Exos and become one herself due to the onset of a terrible genetic disease, which again was her grandfather's fault, but also she would, as an Exo, lead the other Exo in a massive fight on Europa, a war of sorts against the Vex. You see, after Clovis Bray had built the Glassway portal, the Vex began to invade through it, and so Elsie Bray would begin to fight back against them with the assistance of many Exos at her side. One more notorious figure at her side when she fought against the Vex was Banshee 44, although at this moment in time, he wasn't known as Banshee 44. In fact, he wasn't even known as Banshee, and the many battles that occurred show exactly how he got from 1 to 44. I'll go ahead and let you guys explore that topic out a little bit more on your own if you're interested, and I'll do so by linking my lore video on an exotic weapon that references this exact topic. It's called the Lament. It's an exotic sword from Beyond Light, and it's very much worth getting if you do have Beyond Light. Fantastic stuff. At the end of the Vex invasion, ultimately, it was Elsie Bray's decision to put most of the facilities on Europa out of service. The only strange exception was that they didn't destroy the Vex Gate, should they need it in future instances. The Exos aren't a single coherent faction or nation. They are not a society, and they have no attached ideology. What they do have is their memories, bound up and hidden in each of their minds. Their minds hold perhaps the greatest secrets of the Golden Age. If only we could unlock them. But that's all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you found this a little bit more illuminating as to the history and basic lore and story surrounding the Exos. If you are finding these videos useful, go ahead and let me know by leaving a comment down below, and of course, go ahead and also hit subscribe for more videos in this series. My apologies that we took a bit of a break for it. I was ill previously, and you might still be able to hear some of that in my voice, so yeah, again, sincerest apologies for that. Furthermore, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like too. I'd very much appreciate that. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name has been My Name is Byf. Por audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.